Hey gang, Mocha Boy here, welcome back and thanks for tuning back in. So it's been a while since I've been behind the camera, but life's tricky with a newborn, especially a rambunctious little 18-month-old. You know, he lets Daddy get away every now and again to work on his toys. And it's usually 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, but I try to squeeze it in whenever I can. So what we're going to be doing today, I've got a very special package all the way from halfway across the planet. Chris LaRue from Armattan Quads sent me a sample version of the Tilt R FPV quadcopter. This is a 300-ish millimeter quadcopter, and I'm going to show you some of the components that I selected for this, some of the thought process behind that. Do a quick unboxing, and then just do a quick weigh-in, and yeah, we'll see how fast I can get this built and up in the air. So yeah, if you have any questions, just go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'm going to put a build log on RC Groups with some photos and dimensions. I'm sure you guys are going to want to see what types of things that you can fit within the component bays, you know, what the weights are, things like that. So I'll make sure I get that all documented and thrown down into the blog. So yeah, come along and have some fun. Alright, cool. So before we get into what's in the box, just wanted to talk really quickly about some of the components that I selected for this. Now, one of the cooler things that I found are these motors from Ready to Fly Quads. These are the Ready to Fly Quads 2208 2300 kV motors. These will run 5, 6, 7-inch props on 3S, 4S. There's also an 1800 kV version of these if you want to run bigger props, you know, 7, 8, 9-inch props. I chose to go for the smaller prop size because I want to try to keep everything as compact as possible. I have big quads, so I wasn't really looking for an 8-inch prop rig. Now that does mean this is probably going to sacrifice a little bit of duration for some speed, for some speed. But you know, we'll see what happens when we do the first flight tests. But these are really great motors. And the other thing that the other thing that's really cool. Let me just open this. The other thing that's really cool about these motors is that they come with these replaceable mounting posts. So one of the first things to go anytime you crash is going to be the mounting, the propeller mount. And you know, if you're running things like Sunny Skies or Cobra motors, they're great motors, but you know, if you bend that motor, it's going to render a lot of your. It's going to cause all kinds of problems with. It's going to cause all kinds of problems with vibrations and things like that. So it's nice to have the option of being able to just replace this component and leave the motor intact. And you know, it's a very beefy motor. It's got about let's see how long those. So. Pretty long wire leads, and this is going to be necessary because we're going to be routing a lot of these wires through the tubes in the Tilt R. So really great motor there. At least that's what the thrust tests say on the boards. The 1800 kV versions of these put out about 1.2 kilograms of thrust on 5-inch propellers on 4S, I think. You can look up the. I'll link out the thrust test. There are no numbers on these just yet, but these numbers should be pretty good. I've had pretty good luck with their motors. Now the other components here, these are RC Timer, BL Heli electronic speed controllers. These are one-shot enabled, damp light. The only thing they don't come with are voltage, linear voltage regulators. But I'll be handling that I'll be handling voltage regulation with some other components. There was this board that I received from John Barter on the Morphi threads. This is the FPV PDB board, and which comes with the filtering components and then 5-volt and 12-volt input/outputs depending on what you need. You solder in a Pololu voltage regulator into there, and then you get 5 or 12 volts out depending on what you need. I may use this. I haven't decided yet. I typically use copper plates, but we'll see. Now for flight controllers, I'm going to be using the Naze 32. This is just an acro, but that's just because these are extremely fast to set up. If you know what you're doing, you can get a quad up in the air in about 5 minutes. That's just to get the build completed and flight and airworthy. But the plan at some point is to move on to a Brain FPV flight controller, because this rig is going to be big enough to carry things like GPS and a nice payload. So that's the long range goal. That's to transplant the Brain FPV flight controller from this Morphi 4S into here for some fun. So that covers all the major components. There's like little ancillary knickknacks that I have kind of scattered around the place, but Alright, so let's go ahead and crack this puppy open. I'm going to come in from, let's just do this side here. Now, I mean, you're obviously going to get a nicer package than this. This is one of the sample versions, and it came from, again, halfway across the planet, so. Okay, let's see what we got here. Nice, nice, nice. Wow. That's huge. Look at that. Here are the carbon booms. These look like the top and bottom plates. And this looks like all of the hardware, really nicely packaged. Okay, let's see. So there's no build instructions with this, but yeah, I mean, who reads instructions, right? It'll take me some time to go through and kind of lay out the pieces and see how to put everything together, but it should be pretty straightforward. These look like all the internal components, motor mounts, boom brackets, and camera mounts. Let's see. Not sure what this piece is, but I'm sure that information will become available in time. So some more brackets here. Not sure what all these components are, but this is going to be a fun build. And then these look like all the standoffs and hardware. So let's see what all of this weighs. Let's take that out. This is the big thing that everybody's looking for, to see what they have to work with. Alright, so boom brackets. Oops. Looking at ounces, we want grams. Okay. So there. Package, hardware. More brackets, and screws. So we're looking at 460 grams, 470 grams dry. And then once we start to add, let's weigh in the motors. So this motor is going to be about 24 grams. The ESCs are 2 grams a piece. The other big components on here. Yeah, so by the time all is said and done, you'll be looking at about 550, 600 grams dry, and then whatever you want to do for batteries. Now this is an 1830C 4-cell battery, so this comes in at about 200. We'll be looking, depending on what power system you run and what battery you run, you'll be looking at somewhere around a kilogram, 900 grams, 1100 grams. Depending on what battery you're using, but you should be able to, let's see, 600, 200. Yeah, it looks like the builds are going to be anywhere from 800 grams to about a kilo, depending on what battery and motors you're using. Again, these are 2208s. I'd imagine some people might even be interested in throwing 2216s on there, but that's probably overkill. I mean, these are going to be able to, I think by the time all is said and done, I'll be running about a 4 or 5 to 1 power to weight ratio. By the time I slap on the props, so should be interesting. That about does it for now. I'm going to take out all of these components and get them photographed and then throw them up into the blog. But for right now, that should suffice for this round. All right, so stay tuned. More coming.